Hi there, I'm Jennifer, editor and founder of Edition Dog magazine, and today I'm joined by Jules and Claire from the Lost Dog Tracking Network. So, would you like to tell us a bit about who you are and organisation?
After you, Claire.
Yeah, shall I go first? Good morning. So I'm Claire, and I am
Yeah, yeah. Feel free.
I am the founder and I guess the head trainer of Lost Dog Tracking Network. I think.
So, how long have you been with the organisation?
So I'm the founder of the organisation. I founded the organisation in 2023, but I've been training Lost Dog Tracking since 2018.
Right. What about yourself, Jules?
So I'm Jules. I actually run one of the groups in the network. So I run Southern Counties Lost Dog Tracking. So we all trained with Claire, and we're all basically overseen by Claire. And we have been going about, I think, 2 years now.
That's really good. So, I mean, for me as a dog owner, one of the worst things that I can think can happen to you is your dog becomes lost when out on a walk. I sometimes worry about when I go out for a walk in case it happens, but then if it happens, the panic an owner must feel, can only imagine it must be incredibly stressful, upsetting, anxiety must kick in quite quickly and panic. So is there anything a dog owner can do for, prior to having to call you to maybe make things easier for you when you arrive?
If they've got a scent article, that is really, really helpful. That is a big problem in a multi-dog household, is having a scent article for that individual dog. And it's a very, very easy thing to prepare and do beforehand and just keep it safe in case you need it.
So am I right? So a scent article is basic, because obviously I have 3 dogs in here at the moment. And obviously if one of them goes missing, for me to actually find something with just their scent would be quite difficult.
Yes.
So for owners then to have something kept safe that only has their dog scent on it. So is that typically a section of their fur, or can it come from other?
It can be anything. So it can be a bit of their hair from grooming. If you groom them all separately, you can make up your own scent article. So you can just stick a spare collar on them for the day and then put it in a bag and label it separately. Or you can get a clean cloth, put on a pair of gloves and wipe it all over that dog. And again, put it in a self-sealed bag, label it, and just refresh it every, 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah. So
Yes,
yes, it's something you should be doing quite regularly then.
yeah. I
And
think for us,
is that quite a key thing that you need? Sorry, Claire.
sorry. I was just going to say that for us, it's really important because it can make that scent item makes the difference as to whether or not we can track. So we would make an assessment about the safety, etc., which we can come on to in a minute. But then if it's a suitable dog for tracking, but then there's no scent item, then we can't proceed. So it's for us, one of our major missions is to keep banging this drum about people making them ahead of time and just keeping them in the cupboard. Hopefully you'll never need them, but then you have them. And then if you're in this worst case scenario, it's much, much easier for us to be able to help.
Yeah, yeah. It's useful to know for an owner. I mean, I never thought about it until, I was in touch with yourselves, and then you think, yeah, I've actually got nothing in my house that just has my own, that individual dog scent on. So when an owner notices their dog's missing, what should they do? I mean, how quickly should they be getting in touch with you to say your dog's missing? How long should they leave it?
Well, initially, it might depend on how the dog is missing as well. So there's different factors. So, for example, if the dog is missing from a walk and it went off and chased something, what we're going to say is you can contact us as soon as you want because we can provide that first line advice. But from a tracking perspective, we may not come out straight away for a dog that's missing from, say, it chased a deer, let's say, because that dog is much more likely to come back either to the home or where it last saw you, and they often do that quite quickly. So then if the dog, for example, is missing in a different circumstance, we might go ahead of time. So it's very dependent on how that dog is missing and the actual dog.
Right. So it's probably a case of, I suppose, if give you a phone when the dog's missing, and then you can sort of assess that situation and offer some advice, and then obviously come out based on, obviously depending on the scenario. Is that what you're saying? You'll come out, you can kind of assess it.
Yeah, you'd assess it on a dog-by-dog basis and then work out when you would go out depending on the scenario. The first bit of advice would basically be to the owner to stay put.
Right. So is that the first thing the owner should do then, is stay put where they are when the dog goes missing? Yeah. Right. I mean, I've seen people say things like, put out food, put out blankets, put this and that out. Is that correct, or should the owner just really focus on staying where they are at that time?
So I think
So you can put out a human scent article if you can't stay at the lost point,
Right.
because it almost is like a homing beacon for the dog to draw them in. But the first bit of advice would be to stay there, because more often than not, they will orientate back to where they were lost from.
Right. That's fine. So, is there any other? So, what we've had? Obviously, we've featured you in the magazine, and one of the interesting things you pointed out was that when a dog goes missing, there can be that sort of flight and fight response. So, can you maybe talk us through that? And there is a sort of reaction from people to get as many people there to try and help find the dog as quickly as possible, isn't there? But can you maybe explain the flight and fight response to the listeners then?
Yeah, so I think this one is really, really difficult, because this is something that until you see it, it's very difficult to comprehend it, I feel, until you see it. So what we would say to you is that there's a high likelihood that once your dog is missing, that it changes into what we call a survival mode or a flight mode. And what that means is that the dog's behaviour will change to what it would be if it was at home or with you, because what the dog starts to do is to prioritise safety, essentially, because it's worried. So what that looks like for the dog is to keep more hidden out the way, to be in perhaps a more quieter area, but also as well, they would start to look at things that perhaps normally don't worry them. So humans would be the big one. So a lot of the time, people say, "Oh, my dog is friendly with humans," but in a loss situation, that can change and vary, because the dog can perceive humans now as a threat. So people trying to grab the dog or pursuing the dog in chase makes them more frightened, more in survival mode, more running away, that kind of thing. It's a really, really tough one, because what actually happens quite a lot as well is that the dog doesn't have immediate recognition of an owner or family member. So that, I think, that's very hard. So the owner might go to the spot where the dog has been sighted, let's say, and they might even see the dog sometimes. But if they would call the dog, there's a really high chance dog will look at them, freeze up a bit, panic, and run away. And that's really difficult to see. But it's definitely one of those things, well, I think not just me, I think anybody who's involved in lost dogs, until you've seen that, it's really hard to sort of comprehend what it looks like, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So once an owner's phone called the Lost Dog Track Network and you arrive, can you maybe talk us through what it is you do when you arrive? So what's the first thing you do, and then how do you then get involved in finding the dog?
So we actually work with quite a few other people, so we might not get direct owner contact, but we might get it through another group. So as long as we know we've got the scent article and a time frame is suitable to go and track, then we would turn up, usually with a couple of dogs and a buddy. So we'll have somebody, we never go out on our own, we have somebody that go with us, and we would track from the last sighting or the lost point, depending on the information we've got, to try and basically get a direction and make a pattern of, like, map out where the dog's gone or going, and see if we can get a pattern, so we could then set up cameras and food stations and things to be able to see it and catch it.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, I think
obviously you have fallen. Sorry, Claire.
I was just going to jump in and say, like, just to add on to what Jules said, is that our aim really is almost mapping out an area that the missing dog is in. So the most, unless it's what we would term as like a very vulnerable dog, so a very elderly dog or an injured dog, we're usually about 24 hours behind the dog with tracking, because we've usually given it that time. So from the start point, the dog has probably moved considerably from there. So our job is to locate the area it's in. I think just to kind of say that is important, because a lot of people think that we would go out tracking and be coming back with the dog, which does happen sometimes, but not frequently.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we're usually going out because there's no sightings as well.
yeah.
So they don't
Yeah.
know where the dog's gone. And that's, that's where the tracking dogs really come into their own, because you're giving them a direction and an area rather than them just not knowing.
Yeah, yeah. So that's quite good, just to sort of manage people's expectations then, that, yes, well, she's saying it can happen, it's less frequent that you come back with the dog. So really what you're doing is you're providing that map and an area of search, basically, where the dog is kind of maybe located. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what?
So
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay in there, which is a bit of a nightmare.
it's
So
okay.
I think what happens is that, because obviously every search is different and there's slightly different scenarios. So, for example, if a dog had an injury, let's say, and was tucked up somewhere, we're very, very likely to find that dog on the track because it's still. But if the dog is fearful, panicky, and moving a lot, then we're a lot less likely to. We might have a visual on it, but it might be also quite far away, and then we can set up for catching it and things like that. But so if it's a dog that's stuck, tangled in something, injured, those dogs, they're the dogs we would come across on the track. Moving and okay dogs were a lot less likely to.
Yeah. So if somebody's looking to get involved and they're looking to volunteers or maybe touch on first of all with their dog, what makes a good tracking dog and how do they learn? So there's a qualification or a training course, isn't there, for dogs to be able to learn to do this? Is that right?
Yeah, so I run the training across. It usually takes, on average, I would say 8 to 12 months to get a dog fully through the training and get it out working operationally. So we run 3 levels of training, and in each level it's half theory and half practical work, and then there's training in between, then the next level, and then training in between, and then the assessment level. So the final level is, I don't know, Jules, would you say it's a tough assessment level? I feel like it's quite tough.
Yeah, I think it is tough. Yeah, it's tough. It's very realistic for what you would get on an operational track.
Yeah, we try to, it. Sorry, yeah. So it is. The assessment process is really robust because I need to only put dogs out there that I know can do what we say they can do. So for that reason, it is quite a tough assessment process. So that's the training process. In terms of what makes a good tracking dog, I feel this is quite a hard one to answer because actually across our team we've got such a huge variation of breed actually as well. So they'll all have they'll have traits that are very similar. But the main question I get asked, I think, is do I have like a breed that I prefer or that I think is better? And the answer to that is no, genuinely no, I don't. We have a mix of air scenting dogs and ground scenting dogs, and some that do a little bit of each. And we have a big mix of breeds from Jack Russell up to Shepherds, Spaniels, Lurcher, Kelpies, Retrievers. We've got and everything in between almost that you can think of. So the traits, though, that we'd look for, you need to have a dog that is motivated for the job. So the dog needs to have a good reward system. So dog likes food, dogs likes the toy, etc. They need to be physically capable and fit. Like we do maintain our dogs and treat them really like athletes. So I think a lot of the time you'll see us handlers like limping about, but you won't ever see that in any of the dogs. The dogs are all really fit and well maintained. So there are some physical things, ailments that would be preventative, I think, from operational work. You need a good deal of persistence in the dog. So, and for him to be quite tenacious, I think. So oftentimes the dogs that I see coming into this are complete pains, I would say, in the home, and often can be a little bit difficult to live with, but then they excel in this type of job. I feel like Jules can attest to that, can't you, Jules?
Yeah. Absolutely can attest to that. I have a lovely spaniel that's a nightmare and an amazing tracking dog.
Yeah.
She herself would be lost if we allowed her, and be quite happily lost, I think. But she's an amazing tracking dog. She is so determined.
Yeah. So really, if somebody has a dog that sort of, has those sort of traits, and it's quite nice to hear that you're open to all breeds. So I mean, I think the sort of perception is, you need a sort of a certain breed of dog that's innately used for tracking. So it's nice to hear that there's so many different breeds involved and so many different people. So you have to redo your training quite a lot then? Is it something you do a lot of practice and sort of keep up the dog's skills?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a code of conduct, which Claire could go through, but we have to be assessed annually. And as a team, we have regular team training, regular team meetups, because all the buddies need to know the dogs, and obviously all the dogs need to be kept fit. So we have regular sessions for team training and then regular assessments with Claire.
So if somebody doesn't have a dog that they feel would be suitable, is there other ways they can get involved with the organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we never ever track on our own. So we always need somebody to come out with us. So you don't necessarily need to be training a dog. We're always up for helpers to come out, because we can never go out alone. And sometimes, as we've all got other jobs, it's quite hard to organise the team to go out together. So any buddies that can come out and help us and assist, they carry our gear, they help with the mapping. There's lots of ways to help. There's lots of volunteer search teams, so you can help with the ground searching, drone pilots, all sorts. But certainly for the lost dog tracking team buddies, we can't do anything without them. You can't go out on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is lots of ways that people get involved.
Yeah, I think with
Yeah.
the buddying, actually, I often think that maybe people think it's not that important, as in from the outside looking in, they maybe think, oh, that's not, really important, but it's massively important, because actually, out of all the teams that there are, the lost dog tracking teams will always be the smallest teams, because we're really bespoke in what we do. So let's say each team, as an absolute maximum, maybe there's 10 operational dogs, but that would be like the bigger teams like Jules is. In some of the teams, there might only be 5 or 6 operational dogs. So then if you're relying on 2 people being available to go all the time, but you've only got your own team to go. So we love to have, most of the teams would have at least maybe 2 or 3 or even 4 people who are buddies that don't work a dog, because then it increases the availability for us to go out. So then it's really important job.
Yeah. So if somebody's looking to get in to be, help you out, how would they sort of get in touch? Is it just with yourself, Claire? And obviously we can share details. Would they just reach out to you to get sort of more information?
I'm only laughing because I'm just about the worst person for admin you'll ever meet. I'm terrible. But I do have a system in place for that. I have people that help me. So yeah, I think there's 2 main ways really. One would be to go to the main website, which is lostdogtrackingnetwork.co.uk, and on there there's a list and a map of all the teams. So you could find the one most local to you, and you can contact them directly and see when they've got courses running, or you absolutely can contact me directly as well. Either way, I think is good. But I thought that Jules would laugh when we talked about
So how many? Obviously, you've been going for 2 years. How many dogs do you think you've helped, or how many owners have you helped in that time?
God, I mean, for us, for our team, I'd say it's probably about 50 to 70.
Mhm.
But for the whole network, I mean, Kirsten's been doing it for years.
Yeah, God, I've got to try and do some math in my head now. For my home team in West Yorkshire, because we were running as the only team from 2018 to 2023, but it's still a long time, and I've assisted in well over 100 searches, absolutely, with my own dog. I would say between all the teams together, we must be in the higher, I don't know, it's probably over 500, in all the teams together, I would say, because the length of time that even my team on its own was running, we've done a lot. So I would say 500 probably, but that is a sort of guesstimate.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine, obviously, for the owner, they're in that state of panic and they're obviously going through all those emotions. Do you find that quite hard when you turn up to something, Jules, that you've got that owner there that has that sort of expectation and they're in that sort of feeling of stress? I mean, it must be quite hard for you to see that side of it.
It is very hard. I think actually that contact, that one-to-one, rather than on a phone or through an app, actually seeing somebody. I've gone out before on searches when we actually haven't been able to deploy the dogs, but I've still gone out to meet the owner to talk them through, because they just need that person there. But it is very, very hard. It's not for everyone. It is quite hard dealing with the owners. It's a horrible situation to be in, and they're obviously very, very emotional. And you very rarely turn up with their dog. You're just assisting everybody else. But being able to just go meet them, talk them through it, explain what you can do, is very, very valuable to them, I think.
Yeah, it must bring them some comfort just to know they're not in that on their own. And I think when you're dealing with something that you're so emotionally entrenched in, as the owner, it can sometimes be quite hard to think things through.
Yeah, our owners get overwhelmed incredibly quickly as well. So to actually just go and speak to them, talk to them, explain things, help them with things, even things like just postering, because a lot of people don't understand why postering is very important. But if you can get them set up with that, or get their friends set up with that and take jobs off to other people to give them more time, yeah, it's really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. So, is there anything else you want to say about the organisation before we finish today? I mean, I think I've tried to cover most things. Is there anything you feel like I've missed out that you feel is quite valuable?
I think
No, I don't think so. I mean, if everybody can, Claire, go.
sorry. I think I probably would say just a couple of things. So one thing I would say to tag on to what Jules was just speaking about in an owner contact would be, I think a lot of times because of the overwhelm and social media is helpful, but it also can be very unhelpful, because one thing that can happen a lot is judgment from people, all these nasty comments and things. And I'd be really keen to say that we are not judging anybody when they lose their dog. I think that's very important for people to think about, because maybe they don't want to call somebody to help them because they fear that, oh, well, it's my fault or whatever. What we know, because actually there's quite a lot of handlers in teams across the country who are there because they did lose their dog and they know what it's like, and then they decided to join and train a dog to help. It can happen to anybody. Nobody should ever be complacent, because, honestly, I've done searches where the person tripped up walking the dog, fell over, dropped the lead, it spooked the dog ran away. That sort of thing, it's not to do with irresponsibility. It can happen. So I think that's really important to say. And yeah, I think as well, what I would also say is that direct contact and getting that information maybe from one source makes it easier for the owner, rather than trying to read a social media post with 150 comments and they're all giving slightly different advice. So sometimes once
Yeah.
you've got a search team, maybe it's good to hand your social media over to someone else. But as the owner who's very stressed and overwhelmed and upset, just sticking in one place with the search team and letting them handle that kind of side of things.
Yeah, that's good advice. I've seen it myself. And that's why I was saying at the start. You see somebody posts up they've lost their dog on social media, and it's just comment after comment about, have you left food out? Have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done this? And I suppose if you're like that, you're seeing that owner, and they're getting all these messages, and none of them are actually really giving you that sort of direction or direct support as well. So yeah, that's where your organisation comes in, isn't it? Giving people that contact and advice, and like you say, Jules, if you can't come out even with the dog, just to have somebody there that can support you through it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had quite a few searches lately where we have just advised, nothing else. We've never gone out with the dogs, but they just need that person to talk to, that they can message at any time and ask questions. And you can just, you can give them all that information and support them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. And then, yeah, thank you very much. And obviously, I'll share the details and let people know how they can find you. And importantly, as well as, get involved with the organisation. Because like you say, the more people that you have getting involved, either with their dogs or without, they can help more dogs that are lost, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Bye.
Yes, thank you.
Bye.